So the reason I got into making movies was really so that I could make more money on the road as a dancer. So with working with Caribbean Films, it was perfect because I only made 2 movies a year. So in between making the movies, I spent the majority of my time on the road dancing. Well, my husband and I had wanted to start a family, and that's a whole nother story I'll cover in another video. But I finally was able to have a beautiful, wonderful, healthy baby boy, and I was so excited. And we were getting along very well. And our son traveled with us. We had a babysitter that traveled with us, and she would watch our son, while I worked, and did my shows. So one of the places that I went frequently was Connecticut. And there were several nice places to work up in New England, in Massachusetts, Connecticut, New York City, of course. But there were 2 places in particular in Connecticut that I worked. One was the Log and Lantern in Yantic, and another one was a club in Hartford. So I was working in Hartford, and this is when my son was very young. He was just a few months old. And I was dancing on stage, and I know a lot of you guys might not know as much as we women would like you to know about female anatomy. But one of the things that happens when you're breastfeeding a baby is sometimes you have what's called a letdown reflex. And this is totally involuntary. There's nothing you can do to control it, but all of a sudden, milk starts to leak a little bit from your breasts. And like I said, you can't help it. You can't control it. There's nothing you can do about it. So I was doing my show, and that happened. So after the show, I always did a question and answer session. They'd hand me a microphone, and I'd answer questions from the audience. Well, one of the guys in the audience asked how I got that water to come out of my breast. Again, like I said, sometimes guys just don't know enough about female anatomy, certainly not as much as we'd like them to know. So I had to explain that that's not water. Breasts are made for making milk to feed our babies, and that's what it is. I have a newborn baby, and that's what it is. So I gave a little bit of an anatomy lesson, Fast forward to like 6-9 months later, I go back to Connecticut to work in Yantic at the Log and Lantern. Now, I love this place. The people that owned it were so nice, and the customers were some of the nicest guys that I had the pleasure of dancing for. In particular, there were some deaf gentlemen that used to come in, and I played Helen Keller on stage as a kid, so I know the manual alphabet and a little bit, very, very little bit, not nearly enough, of sign language, so I would communicate with them after the show a little bit. But anyway, I was dancing in Yantic at the Log and Lantern, and this was like a Tuesday afternoon. They had an afternoon matinee show. I had done my Monday shows. Everything went fine, and we drove up to do the Tuesday show. Well, we always got there early, of course, because it took me time to get ready for my show, get into my dancing costume, and hand my music to the DJ and that kind of thing. So as we pull up to the club, it's Tuesday afternoon. There's not a lot of cars there. There's not a lot of people there. That was not unusual. But what was unusual was that there were 4 or 5 cop cars. And I told my husband, wait a minute. Slow down. Why are there 4 or 5 cop cars in the parking lot and not a lot of customers? Because with that many customers and in a Tuesday afternoon show, there shouldn't be a lot of chaos or any fights or any real reason to have that many cop cars in the parking lot. Something doesn't add up. This is fishy. So I didn't want to go in there if they were having a shootout or something, I didn't know if maybe they were being robbed. I didn't know what was going down, but I knew I didn't want to be part of it. So this was before cell phones, because this was like 87, 1987. So we found a payphone. They actually had them back then. And we called and said, what's going on? And they said, they've got an arrest warrant for Hyapatia. I'm like, for what? And why does it take 4 or 5 cop cars to bring one dancing woman who, by the way, I'm just a new mother, what did you think I was going to do? So apparently they had a warrant for my arrest from the episode in Hartford, where I had given that little speech about what lactation is and how that's actually milk that comes from my breast. They considered that to be obscene. Yeah. Isn't that crazy? I'm teaching people sex education that they should have learned in high school about what our breasts are really made for. They're not really a sex object. They're not really a sexual organ. They're actually to feed our babies. And I'm teaching guys this. And of all the things I do in my act or on camera, that's what they deem obscene. Oh, of all the crazy things. Well, first of all, I freaked out, because I didn't want to be taken away from my son. I mean, he was solely eating breast milk. He wasn't using any formula or anything else at that time. I needed to be able to be close to my son so I could continue to feed him and not traumatize him, So we decided the best thing to do would be go immediately to Massachusetts, get the heck out of the state so that they couldn't arrest me. And they got me, my husband and I, we got a hotel in Massachusetts. And then my husband went back to the club because we didn't really know at this point what the problem was, why they had put a warrant out for my arrest. So he went back to the club, the Log and Lantern in Yantic, Connecticut, to find out why. Why did they send all these cops for me? And to get my costumes and to say, sorry, but we're not coming back. And they were great. They understood. The club understood. They realized what was going on. And they were very good about it and helped us get our stuff together and get out of there. Get the heck out of Dodge. But that was just really weird. So I couldn't go to Connecticut anymore. Banned in Connecticut for giving a talk on sex education, of all the crazy things. But what I really want to know is, why did they decide they needed 4 cop cars for me? And what kind of crazy ass trip had they planned on the way back to Hartford? Because that's, of course, the capital of Connecticut and where my arrest warrant was issued. So what kind of crazy stuff were they planning that they needed 4 cop cars and 8 officers to take me in? Makes you wonder. I mean, you hear all kinds of horrible stories. I remember when we were in Indianapolis, and there was a girl that was dancing at the 38th Street Bar. I mentioned the 38th Street Bar at the corner of 38th and Pendleton Pike, I believe it was, way back when I was working with Lee Carroll. She had come in to do a show. She was promoting Debbie Does Dallas, and she was dancing there. This didn't involve her, but this was a different time. There was another girl who had gotten arrested for indecent exposure or something. She did something to tick off the cops. So they arrested her at the 38th Street Club, and then the owners watched as they went across the street to a car dealership and just stayed there in the parking lot for like half an hour. And he went over there, and they were abusing her in the back seat of this cop car. So it's a good thing that he was watching and that he went over and looked out for her, because this is something that happens a lot. You know how cops are sometimes. Not saying all cops are bad, but we've all seen the video of cops beating guys that are handcuffed until they're dead. I mean, come on. Kneeling on people's chests and back when they say they can't breathe until they're dead. We've all seen this. So it's not a far stretch to think that cops would arrest a nude dancer or an actress and take her somewhere and have their way with her. And I've heard a lot of horror stories about this. Because when push comes to shove, when you go to court, who are they going to believe? Are they going to believe the cops? Or are they going to believe this dancer or actress? Well, you know the truth. You know they're going to believe the cops. They're going to discredit her. They're going to say that she's making it all up. So I wonder what they had in store for me. And I am so grateful that I paid attention and watched and realized that this doesn't add up. There's something fishy going on here. And I'm glad my husband backed me up in that. And I'm really glad that the club owners understood. So that was just a really weird situation. But, you know, doo-doo occurs, as I like to say. Shit happens. Thank God I got out of that one. Anyway, thank you very much for watching.